Everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the workshop using images and media in your presentations. I'm Marianne Cullen, and my co-presenter is Gigi Kathuria. We both work at the Alpharetta campus in the library.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
I like to start these workshops by asking if there's anything in particular that people have questions about before we get started, so we can make sure that we answer those questions if if possible. Is there a particular interest that you have with this workshop? You can answer in the chat or you can open your mic, either way.
I really don't have a particular question, but one of the things that I always ask myself when I'm doing my PowerPoint and I'm pulling pictures from the internet is that, do I have the right to use this? I always ask myself that,
I love
So,
you.
hmm so
You
so now
should
that I
ask
saw
yourself
this,
that. Yes,
yeah, so
hopefully
now
we will
when I
address
saw this,
that.
I say, yes, I need to know if I have the right to
Okay.
pull this and use it in my presentation.
It's
So that's
like I
why I'm
paid
taking
you
it.
to do the introduction. That's awesome. Okay, if anybody else has anything, chime in. I'm gonna go ahead and move forward. So that was the description of the workshop. So let's say that I'm Rosalind or any one of you, and I have an assignment and I want to use this picture in my presentation or website or whatever my assignment is. What are some things that you would think that I need to consider about this before I decide if I can use it?
Copyright.
Copyright? Mm-hmm. Anything else? I'm sorry?
How to assign attribution.
Attribution, awesome. Yeah. So those are the biggies. We'll just go with that as a general first step. And I will say I didn't put the attribution on this the way I should have, but the same picture is used later with attribution. So that was my excuse.
And before you go any further, what do you mean when you say attribution?
Giving credit, like saying at the bottom where I got this from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and the other thing to consider is how much of it can you use?
Right. Yes, that's part of fair use. So yes, that is something.
Part of it, and how part of it can you call it your own?
Right.
My question too.
Okay. Yes. So these are the basic questions. So you hit on most of them. So is it protected by copyright? There's some things not that are not protected by copyright for one reason or another. Does it qualify for fair use? And I'll explain what that means in a minute. Is there a license that allows me to use it? And I'll also explain that. And, are you going to give proper attribution? And of course, the answer should always be yes. If it requires attribution, you're going to give it. And then, of course, there's your instructor's requirement. So I know that sometimes the professor, one of the professors that was recommending this webinar to their class wanted them to only use things with Creative Commons licenses or public domain. He did not want them to do fair use. So, they have to consider the instructor's requirements also. So first, let's talk about, is it protected by copyright at all? So, what is copyright? I'll just answer. Copyright is a type of intellectual property that protects original works of authorship as soon as an author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression. So original work of authorship means that they created the work. The author fixes the work. That means it is in some form. It's not an idea. It is not an action. It is, a speech or a a printed thing or a website or a song or a movie or something that is tangible form of expression. So those are things that need to happen before something can be copyrighted. So here's some different things. I put the definition over here on the side. Here's some different things. So let's think about which of these things can be copyrighted. So think about, is it an original work of authorship? Is it fixed into a tangible form of expression? So if you'll put in the chat, which of these do you think can be copyrighted? I think that's a smaller list. Can be copyrighted.
A photo?
Mm-hmm. You can chat or unmute. I guess I said chat, but I don't see anything coming in the chat. So if people want to just talk.
So I see that you put this on my desk. I guess you put this on my.
Okay. Okay, I'm getting
About
chats
this.
now. Okay, song, yes, song can be copyrighted. It is a creative form of expression that is fixed into a
But
song.
what about a unique name? Like if you put certain words together to create a name for something. So when I said name, I meant like a unique name.
Um,
Like maybe as a name for
Prince copyrighted when
maybe
he changed his name to the symbol.
that
a name for
that's
website
not a
maybe.
familiar symbol. That was a unique symbol. Actually, names and titles cannot be copyrighted. So if you want to write
Mhm.
another book and call it, um, Gone with the
Right.
Wind, you can.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, names can't be copyrighted and titles.
Only if it's like if it's for your business, can it be copyrighted?
You can trademark things, but that
Oh,
is not quite what we're talking
mm,
about here.
okay. All right,
So
I got it.
I
Okay.
don't think you can open a restaurant in Atlanta and call it Chick-fil-A, you know. Um, but
But you can write a book and call it Chick-fil-A.
I think you could.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm not sure. That would have to go the intellectual property people. So ideas, we already said idea. I'll just go through this. Tweets are tangible forms of creative expression, usually. I mean, if you said it's, 32 degrees today, that's just a fact. I don't know that you can copyright that, but if you said something original that was not just factual, your tweet would be copyrighted. A song, a photo can be copyrighted. Familiar symbols like stop signs, ampersands, um, fonts aren't really copyrighted. Um, Lists of ingredients. So, like the list of ingredients in a recipe is not copyrighted, but the instructions could be, unless they're very minimal. But it's not considered creative. We could argue about that, but lists of ingredients are not. Anything that's common knowledge, the President of the United States is Joe Biden. Some people consider that controversial, but we'll just call that common knowledge. First president of the United States was George Washington. Um, Georgia State is an Atlanta based university. Those are just facts. Nobody owns those. A student essay is actually copyrighted. Some students are surprised to find out that they own the copyright to their own work. So if your professor wanted to display your work somewhere, they would need your permission. And government documents, like even if they're creative, the United States government, this might be different in other countries, United States government documents are not copyrighted.
Just say like symbols like stop signs, ampersands. Those are not.
Those are not. Now, like the Kroger logo, that's not a familiar, that's their logo. That's
That would
different.
be That would be trademarked.
Yeah.
Trademark. Okay.
Yeah. But just things that all of us use, like and sign or a question mark or something. Now, if there's something artistic about it, somebody takes a question mark and they make it fancy, then that's a piece of art. But just the symbol itself, you can't say you can't use a question mark. I invented the question mark. You didn't. It's just something everyone uses. So what rights, this looked better before. I had to squeeze that in there. But anyway, what rights does copyright give? So the person who owns the copyright, which is usually the author or the creator of the work, is that it gives you the right to reproduce that work, to make derivatives of the work. So I can make, part 2 of my book or something, or a, variation of my song. I can distribute it. I can perform or display my work publicly. And I also have the right to assign the copyright to someone else. And this often happens when people have their works published, they might assign the copyright to the publisher. So if you ever publish something, you might want to pay attention to that fine print and see if you're giving your copyright away. Because the first article that I ever published, I don't have the right to distribute that article because I just was so excited to have my article published that I just signed whatever they told me to sign. And then it's like, no, we own the copyright to that. You can't distribute it. And it's like, well, that stinks. I wrote it. But anyway, so pay attention. And you can give others permission to use the work as long as you own the copyright. So, if you don't own the copyright, you don't have these rights. So I, can't reproduce the work and distribute it to other people. I can't make a derivative. There are some caveats there. I can't perform or display it without following the rules of reusing the work or getting permission, or we'll go into the exceptions as we continue.
Is
So
there
those are
such
the,
thing?
go ahead.
No, is there such thing as like licensing it out? I know you can sell your
Yes.
copyright,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then of course you no longer own it. But is there such thing as you maintain it, you still own it, but you can
Disney
Yes.
licenses things all the time.
Yes. We are going to talk about that. So,
and make money from it, is what I'm saying. Make money from it, the licensing.
um, you mean the other person or the copyright holder?
If I own uh the rights to something, if I have a copyright, then
Mm-hmm.
I want to license it out, like
Mm-hmm.
so that other people can use it, but I want to make a profit from it. Like I
Yes.
is that's
Yeah,
what I
that
mean.
happens with, for example, music and films all the time where, you know, the the um the artist owns the copyright of the item and then they license it to the radio station to play on the air, and the radio station has to pay them to play it. And
Okay.
then there's like Taylor Swift in her early days, kind of like me, her copyright is owned by someone else. And so she's re-recording all her songs, so she has the rights to it. But I'm not sure I'm representing that case accurately, but I mean, yes,
Mhm.
yes, definitely you can give rights, and we were going to talk about that.
You are
So,
representing Taylor Swift's problem correctly.
no,
It
I'm a,
has her original songs. She
mhm,
did sign away the rights without knowing, and they are actually owned by somebody that she dated and doesn't
yeah.
like,
Oh, that makes it even worse.
which is why she's re-recording everything to make them worthless.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that happens a lot early in people's careers where you're just excited to have, your record made or your song out there. Um, um, yeah, Paul McCartney owned, it's the other way around. Michael Jackson owned Paul McCartney's work, or Mike, yeah, I think that was it. Anyway, so do you need, what do you think? The work isn't copyrighted unless it has a copyright notice or a copyright symbol. Is that true or false?
False.
True. I would say true, maybe.
False.
Okay. It is currently, wait a second. It is currently false. Now, it actually used to be true. It used to be true that you had to register the copyright with the Copyright Office and you had to put the little copyright notice on there. But now, as soon as you create something, it is automatically copyrighted, even if you haven't published it. So if you wrote in your diary last night, it's already copyrighted. So you can still file a copyright with a Copyright Office, and if you're, seriously publishing something, that's a good idea. But you don't have to. It's copyrighted anyway. Filing it gives you certain advantages like proof that you copyrighted, proof that you were the copyright holder and when you copyrighted it and that sort of thing. So is copyright forever? And I messed up and went ahead and put the answer here. Copyright currently is the life of the author plus 70 years, and this only applies to things that have been published since 1978. And then after the copyright expires, the work is in the public domain. The laws have changed over the years, so it is not quite as cut and dried as I'm making it sound. If there's corporate authors, it's different. If it was before 1978, it's different. There's different rules in play, but for most of the things that we're using for academic purposes these days, it's probably going to have been published after 1978. So pretty much everything is going to still fall under copyright unless some of these exceptions that we're going to talk about in a minute apply. So after a copyright expires, the 70 years is whatever is used up, something goes on into the public domain. And that doesn't mean this particular one, nobody knows who the photographer was, but this means anyone can use it. It doesn't mean you can claim authorship. You can't say you took this picture, but you can still use it in your work if you wanted to use this in your assignment about travel, for example. So public domains, it is no longer protected by copyright and anyone can use it without permission. So the way something goes into public domain is it's not eligible for copyright. So for example, the things we were talking about, like a name or a title, an idea, government works, those things are automatically in the public domain. The copyright is expired. So we talked about that. Or the creator can say, you know what? This is public domain. I'm happy for anybody to use it. They don't need to ask me. It's fine. So the creator can go ahead and put it in the public domain. So now let's talk about fair use. What is fair use? Fair use allows you, it's some exceptions. Let me see if I can explain this well. It is exceptions to copyright that allow for certain kinds of use. And this is the summary, a very brief summary of fair use. It is not cut and dried, which is sometimes confusing, but also makes it very flexible. A lot of our, the actual copyright laws are not written to anticipate new technologies. So things talk about sound recording and television and film, but not electronic, they didn't take into account the web and that kind of thing, because that kind of stuff wasn't a big deal at that point, or maybe hadn't even been invented. So, so one of the things about fair use is the purpose and character of the use. So educational purposes tend to weigh in favor of it's probably fair use, but there's still limitations. Is it transformative? That means it isn't its original purpose. So reusing a part, like an educational movie or a part of a textbook in a class, that's not transformational. That was its original purpose. But if you take something that was not intended to be educational, a piece of art, for example, and you're going to show that in your class, you're using it for a different purpose than the artwork was originally intended as your students are analyzing the artwork or something like that. And is the audience limited? You're not posting it, in the mall or putting it on the web. You're just using it in a classroom. It's very limited use for educational purposes. So those things would weigh in favor of something being fair use. Another thing is the amount and substantiality of the portion used. So somebody mentioned this earlier. So if it's just a small amount of the work and not the whole work, that would be in favor of fair use. And is it only the part you need? If really you just wanted to show your class one little scene from a movie to talk about the lighting in that scene, but you just show them the whole movie because it's fun, that isn't fair use. If you just show the scene you're going to talk about, that would be in favor of fair use. The nature of the work, factual works like we talked about tend to not be you can use factual things more easily than you can use creative things. So say you have a copy of the periodic table. There may be some creativity in the way it's presented and the way it colors or something like that, but it's still pretty factual as opposed to a creative work like a play or a song or something like that. Is it non-consumable? So they don't, by consumable, we're talking about things like worksheets or like a lab, like in a chemistry lab, you have, the lab thing that's designed to be consumable. It's designed to be used up. And so if you're basically what you're doing is you're affecting the market for that thing because nobody's going to buy the lab manual. The teacher just buys one for everybody and makes copies. Everybody's supposed to buy one. And is it published? Things that are published have a stronger argument for fair use. Is it available to buy or license? I mean, can you get it? Is the effect on the market? So if nobody can find this, you're more likely to be able to reuse it. Is there a replacement for the original? So if the faculty member was going to get that lab manual and photocopy it, distribute it to the class, that's not the lab manual publisher has the copyright to that. It's counting on that revenue. I mean, they basically have infringed on the copyright. So each person they're distributing that is impacting the market for the original. If it was just, one part of it, like the first lab, because everybody hadn't got the book yet, that would be more of a argument in favor of fair use because the students are still supposed to buy the manual to use the rest of the book. So just like a lot of times instructors will put the first chapter of their textbook. I shouldn't even be, that's more clear than the lab manual, but the first copy of the textbook either on reserve in the library or in their iCollege class because it takes a while sometimes for the students to get the textbook. So we really want to focus more on Creative Commons in this. So we were not going to, I could do the whole thing about fair use, but there is a USG fair use checklist and some instructions for using it. And then we have a resource guide that it talks more about fair use.
And
So
I just
are
want to
we?
jump in oh, sorry, go ahead.
mm, No, no, I was just gonna say, so basically, are we saying that fair use is you can use the images or the songs or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it is not copyrighted material? Is that like in essence what fair
You
use
can
is?
use it if it's not if it does not qualify for copyright. Fair use allows you to use something that is copyrighted for if certain conditions apply. So
Oh,
usually
okay.
if you're a student in a class and all you're doing is showing that image in a slideshow in the class, it's not posted on the web, it's not published or put up anywhere, it's just in the class, that's usually fine unless the instructor says it's not. Now you should give credit to, you shouldn't act like that was your picture, but it is not a copyright violation. That would fall in the category of fair use.
Okay.
Now, if you're
Yeah, I
going to
was
make a website for the class, that's more widely distributed than just those 25 people or however much it is. So that would not be within fair use because the audience is too big.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So now Shiji is going to talk about licensing. So is there a license that allows you, it may not qualify for fair use, but licensing can allow you to use copyrighted items.
right. So yeah, that's another exception to be able to use copyrighted work is with the like an appropriate license. So with a license, and then some of you have asked questions about this already, but the copyright holder is essentially saying you can reuse this in the way that I want you to use it, as long as you follow the conditions that I have set up for my own copyright. Um, we have an example where we purchase films through library databases. And at the library, we pay a fee that allows these movies to be streamed within classes for only educational purposes within a classroom setting. But we're not paying for the fee for them to be shown at public events or at wider events at the university level. So why you're streaming particular things is important to know, and what you're paying for. Are you paying for the public performance rights to be able to show it in a wider setting? We often tell professors not to show their own Netflix or Hulu accounts within the class because that's not the appropriate use of the license that Netflix and Hulu has allowed for individual subscriptions. So a popular type of license that you may have heard about, it seems like we have a very well-informed crowd, which is great, is Creative Commons licensing. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Creative Commons licensing is. So Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that basically gives a standardized, free, simple way to grant copyright permissions for creative and academic works. It tells you how to ensure proper attribution for their works and allows others to copy, distribute, and make use of those works. It just makes things easy. If you're working in this realm, I would always lean towards using Creative Commons works because you're very it's very upfront about what you can and can't do with anything that has a Creative Commons license. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the different kinds of licenses are that Creative Commons allows for. I'm not going to get like super nitty gritty into all 6, but I think it's good to just know what the general meaning behind what the symbols are for the Creative Commons licensing. So from the top is like the most permissive type of license that if you see that kind of license, you have a lot more flexibility with what you can do with it. And then at the bottom of the list, the CC BY NC ND, that's probably the most restrictive license that Creative Commons allows. And this is kind of how the letters are broken down. So CC BY basically is a license that allows anybody who sees this work to distribute, remix, adapt, and build upon the material in any medium or format. All they're asking for is BY, which is attribution. They just want to be given credit at the bottom of your slide or something that you use this work. You can actually remix it and do with whatever you want, as long as you just say, I got the original work from this particular place. When they add SA, so CC BY SA, it essentially means the same things. But if you license your own materials, you have to do it under identical terms. So SA means share alike. So you share the same kind of license with your own work, with what you've done with the original work. I said I wouldn't go into nitty gritty, but it seems like I will be. So CC BY NC, building a little bit more, getting a little bit more restrictive, is essentially asking the same thing, but don't use it for commercial purposes. So you'll see NC stands for non-commercial. So others can use, distribute, display it, but you have to be using it for non-commercial purposes. So I think the most common way is if you're using it in an educational setting, you're not using it for profit. Then we're getting into CC BY ND. I get a little confused when we get into the ND stuff. So maybe Marianne can jump in, but basically this license allows users to copy, distribute the material in any format as long as attribution is given to the credit, and this license actually allows for commercial use as well. I think that's essentially it. No derivative.
The no derivative means you can't change it in any way. So,
right.
you know, if I have a picture of a chemistry setup, I might, as the person who's getting ready to use someone else's picture of the chemistry setup, I might want to label all the parts or say, you know, this beaker of stuff goes into this thing, and then you know put that on the image. So the no derivative, or I might want to just take a section of the item or something like that. The no derivative means no, use it exactly the way I made it.
Right.
And that might apply in a text item where people say, you know, I've made this worksheet, but you have to use it exactly like this. You can't change it. So that's what the no derivative means.
So then we get to the fifth one, which is essentially using it with attribution for non-commercial purposes, and you distribute the same work with the same license for your own work. That doesn't include the no derivative part of it. And then the most restrictive is CC BY NC ND, which allows reusers to copy, distribute the material in any medium or format for non-commercial purposes only, and must give attribution to the creator. So essentially they try to make it as clear as possible with these large kind of definitions and letters and symbols on what your rights are if you were to take the work and use it in your own setting. Like what are you allowed to do, and what do you have to do in order to be kind of free of any legal restrictions to using these works. So they do allow for certain licenses to remix it to your own liking if they allow for that, or don't remix it, but just give me credit for it, that kind of thing. So Creative Commons is just an easier way to understand what your rights are when you see works with a particular license. Are there any questions? Or yeah, Marianne, did you want to clarify at all? Anything I've said?
I just wanted to say that people can use licenses or give a license that is not Creative Commons. So I think the most common one I see is when somebody says, you don't even have to give me attribution. And it's not necessarily that they're putting it in public domain. It's just like, I don't care if you put my name on here or not. So you people will sometimes make a statement like a terms of use. They'll say these are the terms you can use it under, and they'll say something other than these licenses. But these are, you know, like Shiji was saying, this is the easy way. People know what this means if they're into licensing. So this is kind of the easy way to do it.
It's way
So,
easier
so,
than standard copyright.
Yes. Yes.
so, okay, so like the images, can you go back to that previous slide?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
images, for example, on Pixabay, like uh, Marianne was saying, you like a lot of those um, artists that you don't necessarily have to give them attribution when you use
Right.
their work.
Yeah.
So,
Like when you're making a PowerPoint and you're using this you know images that are within PowerPoint, like you don't go out on the web, you just use the like little clip art and stuff. They're not expecting you to give attribution. I don't even know who made them, you know. So it'd be kind of impossible to give attribution in that case.
because that was gonna be my question. Like a lot of times I'll just like do Google images and pull something from, I mean, sh- I, should I be trying to find out and research who the
Yes.
actual owner of it is?
Yes.
Or
Yes, you should. We'll go into that.
Yeah, but what
Yes, you
about
should.
when you use pictures of people? That's my main concern as well. When you're
Yeah.
using pictures of people, is that public domain or?
Um, no, not necessarily.
The general answer is it depends.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Work.
I guess this is a decent place to mention, we talked about um, the copyright holder has a right to make derivative works, but there's also a fair use thing about transformation, so that could be kind of confusing. So, like, I can't take a song that somebody made and just re-record that song. That is infringing on their copyright. But I could make a parody of that song because
Uh-huh.
it's not the same. It's a, uh, or I could use excerpts of the song in a critique as long as I don't use too many. I could just play like a little bit and say, oh, you would see in this part where the drums came in or something like that. So that's, there's a, you know, a, oftentimes the parody is more of a um, fair use thing than,
Hence why all of the lawsuits against Weird Al Yankovic failed.
yes, yes.
And back to the Pixabay question, if you're pulling images from Pixabay, each of their images has very clear licensing on the website itself that says what they require for attribution or if they don't. So if you look at an individual image that you want to pull from Pixabay, like I'm looking at a sample picture right now, there's one image says it's free for commercial use and does not require attribution. So if you're looking up images from websites like that, they usually provide very clear guidance on what you can do with the images.
So
But we're gonna talk a little.
so that's an example of like what you just read. That's one, like, let's say I was making t-shirts. I could
Right.
actually use that for commercial use then.
Right.
Yes.
So there's some website, and we're going to talk if we have time. We're running a little low on time. We were going to show good sources to go to understand what the licenses are for
Okay.
images. Like if you just go on Google, there are ways to search by that, but websites like Pixabay and Flickr and other websites kind of give very clear licensing on what you can and can't do with the images. So we'll definitely talk about that a little bit. So am I going to give proper attribution? So it's just important to know to give attribution to the creator in the way they want to be attributed. And we've already kind of talked about that. So let's talk about citation versus attribution. So I myself am still a little confused on the differences, but in general, in terms of citation versus attribution, citation is the use of a work for academic purposes, whereas attribution is kind of clearing yourself legally as to what the licensing is for a particular work. Citations, you can quote and paraphrase. It's essentially a lot of times citation is dealing specifically with textual copyrighted sources, whereas attribution in general terms is somewhat referring to more visual forms of art. That's a very, very broad general way to talk about this, but I know there's specifics to either one of these cases. But with citation and scholarly use of a work, you're kind of covering yourself academically. You can paraphrase, but you can't change the work, obviously, without permission. They have very specific styles to use when you're providing credit. So you either use a specific style determined by the discipline you're citing within, and the list of resources are kind of at the end of the book. Attribution is dealing mainly with legal purposes, covering yourself legally. Am I allowed to distribute this? And it's typically the full work. So it's not just sometimes just a portion of the work. It can be all of the work rather than, so you're not like attributing like the whole book. You might just, you're using like a whole image. The author has given advance permission to change the work. So again, you can remix things under certain circumstances. Attribution statements are not fully well defined yet, so there's still kind of just more best practices as to what to do when you're providing attribution, and they're often found on the same page as a resource. So like, for example, if you're using an image in a PowerPoint, you'll find your attribution within that PowerPoint slide, not at the end. That's essentially like a broad stroke look at what citation versus attribution is, and if you want to go to the next slide, I can show an example of the difference between the two. So here's an example of a citation of an image. So let's say you're writing a paper for a class and you're using this image in your paper. Your professor probably will want you to cite in a certain format. So you would use MLA, let's say, for example, and that this is the exact format you would cover yourself academically for saying, I use this source and I'm using ideas from this source in my own paper. And here's the format you would follow specifically to provide credit in an academic purpose. If you want to go to the next slide, like I said earlier, there's no specific guidance like MLA on what attribution should look like, but there are ideal attribution practices, which always include the title, the author, the source, and the license. And if you want to go to the next slide, and it kind of got cut off a little bit at the bottom. So you see Marianne, when she first showed this image at the beginning of the PowerPoint, there was no attribution. But if you were wanting to use this in your PowerPoint for class, this would be the ideal way to kind of give that kind of attribution to the source. And sometimes the best practices for attribution are different depending on whether you're using it for print or for web purposes. So we've provided an example of either at the bottom of this slide.
Yeah, in the web, you can hyperlink to
Yes.
the source, so you don't actually have to include it as long as it's hyperlinkable. But obviously, if it's in print, or sometimes if it's on a slide and you're not going to distribute the slides where people could use the hyperlink, you would go ahead and put the URL there.
And if you were using an image from a source that said no attribution required, you probably wouldn't have to do this. I've got in the habit of just going ahead and doing that though, just to kind of, for my own purposes, to remember where I got the image from, should I want to use it in the future or something. It's kind of a good bookkeeping mechanism to kind of know where your images are coming from and what your rights are for using
Yeah,
it.
even if it's something like you were talking about with Pixabay or the
Mhm.
Microsoft Clip Art, I would at least put the attribution in the notes, if not right on the slide, because if I want to use it later, I don't know where I got it from. And that way I can say, oh, this was one of those Pixabay images that I didn't need to give attribution for, so then I don't have to go back and try to find it again.
My discipline requires citation for everything. So just to not get out of practice for that, I cite everything whether I need to or not.
Yeah. The citation, one way, citation is basically to give credit where credit is due. So I want to make it clear I didn't take this picture. So I'm citing the original source of the picture so that I don't plagiarize. Attribution is more of a copyright. It's to stay legal. So it's to avoid copyright infringement. So they do overlap in terms of like giving credit, but the the functions are a little different. And like Shiji was explaining, the credit's a little different. So for example, let's say you had the book Frankenstein. Frankenstein is out of copyright. Uh, so you can print Frankenstein, you can sell it, you can do everything, but it's still plagiarism if you put, Frankenstein by Marian Cullen on there. So you still have to give, if you were going to use it in academic work, you still need to, credit Mary Shelley for having written it. So that would be plagiarism. Does that help?
Maybe.
Maybe, maybe. Just give lots of credit wherever possible.
Just over credit when in doubt.
So we have picked out some of our favorite places for finding different things. And we were hoping to have some time to do live demos, but we were afraid we wouldn't. So we have some screenshot versions. But if anybody has specific questions, if we go over time, we can do
I'm dropping the
specific
links in
search.
chat too if anybody wants to do
Okay.
some searching on their own. If you click on a link within WebEx, you'll get a little error message, but just click continue.
Okay.
I
So
have a question.
go ahead.
I have a question. I mentioned it earlier. Let's say there's an image that I want to use.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go back to your example earlier when you was talking about let's say a question mark. Let's say I
Mm-hmm.
did the Google images on question marks and I found a question mark that I
Mm-hmm.
like, but I wanted to change it up a bit.
Mm-hmm. That would
At,
depend on the
what point?
permissions. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say at what point, or is there any point that I could call it my image, my design? If like, how much redesigning of it could I do to actually call it my design? You know
I
what I'm
don't,
saying? Like,
yeah, I don't know the the thing about it being a question mark is makes it
Or I just use
complicated
that as an example. It
because
could be anything.
that's a symbol. So I guess it depends on how creative the
It could
original
be a
question mark
bird.
was.
It could be a
A
bird.
bird.
Let's not use
I would
question. It could be a
always, yeah, I would say if it's a derivative of that thing, then I would still give credit. You can, and we didn't go into this in our attribution thing, but there's a way to do the attribution where you say this is a derivative of this. And I made it look like a watercolor or, whatever it is, but you're still giving credit to the original artist.
Okay, so there is no such thing as making something your own. It's like it's your own design now.
No, not like that. I mean, you could take the idea, of there's going to be a bird on a branch and you could draw a different bird on a branch or something like that. But yeah, if you took that original thing and you transformed it in some way, it's still a derivative of that work, would be my advice. Um, but I think some of this will be more clear as we go through the examples. So let's do that. So the first one I have is Wikimedia Commons. The nice thing about Wikimedia Commons is like everything in here is openly licensed in some way. The exact license may change, but they are all openly licensed. And so you just do your search. The default is images, and you can limit by file type or image size or different things, the same kind, the type of license. I had trouble with this one because the description of the work was in Japanese and I didn't have a way to put that in my attribution. So what I did is there's a link down below, like show more information, and I get on this page that has like download, use this file and stuff, and it will tell you, gives you what to say. So if you run into that, that can help.
So you would put that right there, that whole
Yeah, I would copy
tag,
that. Yeah.
and put it underneath your photo,
Yes.
like caption it underneath that
Yes.
photo. Is that okay?
So when using Google Images, what you can do to see if something's Creative Commons licensed or to at least help is once you've done your search in Google Images, then you click on Tools, and then you click on Usage Rights, and you then choose Creative Commons licenses. Now, I was just trying this yesterday. Google Images used to be notorious for you would say you want Creative Commons licensed things, and then you'd actually click on the image and it was not open. Yesterday, it was like something dramatic had changed, and everything I was trying to find one that wasn't Creative Commons license, and everything I clicked on was Creative Commons license. So I will say be careful with using Google Images. Don't just assume that it's okay. Go ahead and click through to the image and try to find the license on it. If you can't find the license, I would not feel safe saying it was Creative Commons licensed.
Okay, so to make sure I'm clear, you go to Google Images, and there should be tools. You should also see
Tools.
tools. Click on tools, and then usage rights would be one of the drop down, and click on the Creative Commons licenses.
Yes, and this only
use.
appears after you've searched. So you
Okay.
do the search because all this stuff isn't there in the original search box.
So the commercial and other licenses means that this is you cannot use these images. They're copywritten.
Usually, yes.
Okay.
Other licenses could be something else. There could be other licenses, but Creative Commons license would be the easiest way to make sure that you're getting images that you can most likely use.
If you start a new search too, it gets rid of that Creative Commons part. So if you start it, let's say you're like, okay, travel Japan's not working for me. Let me try travel, you start another search. It gets rid of that Creative Commons you've already checked off. So just make sure to check that off again.
Yeah. So some of you are working on things that might require you to use video or music, and there we found a whole lot of places that have those, but these are a few. YouTube, Vimeo has a specific part of Vimeo that only lists things with Creative Commons license, and Wikimedia Commons also has video and sound. And then there's a website called Free Music Archive. Be a little careful with that because some of the things require royalties. It's like royalty free or something like that. And they actually require you to pay a fee in order to use the things without paying royalties. So, I don't want to pay $20 a month to use the thing. But there's a section of this that is just openly licensed. So just make sure you're in the right section when you use that.
So when you go onto Free Music Archives,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just by that title, I would have thought that everything on this is free.
Yeah, that's what I
So you're
thought too.
saying, so is there like, so you're saying that there is a section, even when you get into that website, there's a section that says free, and
Uh-huh.
that's what you would want to go straight to, and it
Well,
really is free.
where it says royalty free, that doesn't mean there's no fee. That means after you've paid the fee, you can use it without paying royalties. Like you don't have to pay a fee each time you use that song. No, because you've already paid for the rights with that one fee. But what you as a student most likely want is not that. You want the ones that you don't have to pay anything. So you just need to make sure you're in that area.
I guess what I'm saying is, how do we know? Will it actually say?
Um, if
I
we
mean,
have time at the end, I'll go there and
okay,
show
all
you.
right.
I don't have an example of that in the slideshow, but there's two different buttons to click and you choose the one that
Because I
does it.
would like for you to demonstrate each one of these that you have up here, so
I
we
would
can
too,
see
but
where to
it's not a
go.
2 hour webinar. So in YouTube, you can do your search and then you go to filters. It's up at the top. There's all these results down here, but if you click on filters up at the top of your results, it will open this up. And one of the things is Creative Commons licenses. So people can choose when they post their YouTube videos, they can choose to have a Creative Commons license. And YouTube, unless it states otherwise, it's CC BY. That's all it is. So they don't have, a whole bunch of different ones. So for example, this video has the license. When I open up the description of the video, the only the first few lines actually show by default, but if you, click on show more, it'll show that the license is there. One of the things about YouTube is it's not that easy to download the video if you wanted to edit it in some way, like if you only wanted to use a little tiny portion or you wanted to incorporate it into a montage or something like that. So one of the ways that we found to do this is this Firefox extension add-on, it's called, here. And it doesn't work in Google. And then when you open the video, you'll get something that looks like this, download as, and you can download it to your computer and, make your clip or whatever it is you want to do. This is actually the ad, but the actual video would be what you would download. In Wikimedia Commons, it's the same kind of thing as I showed you before, but they also include sounds and videos. So you would do your search, and then instead of just looking at the images, which is the default, you can change it to audio or video. And audio includes sound effects as well as music, or video. In this case, it's video. And so I would choose the thing that I'm interested in, and then I can look to see what the license is. And then when I click on more details, it actually gives me the file to download. So I can just download the file, and I would choose the one that best suits my needs. And I will say when I said 32, it was just a little tiny. So you probably want, for functioning, you probably want the full resolution one, and you can edit it from there if you want to edit it. One of the things that many students are excited about is finding out that they are the copyright holder of their own work. So you are the copyright holder, and if you want to license your work to allow other people to use it, and this particularly pertains to students who have websites, or you know, it could even be social media where you're like, you know, I know people are going to use my work, so how can I get them to give me credit? Because, you know, unfortunately, people making websites are not always respectful of other people's copyright, and it may be that they don't know better, maybe that they don't care, but at least if you've tried to put the licensing stuff on there, somebody might give you credit the way they should. So what you do is you decide what license you want from all those licenses that Shiji was talking about earlier. Creative Commons actually has a license chooser that will walk you through the steps of choosing a license. You communicate that license in some way. And then when you are uploading your work, say in this case it would be a video that I was going to upload, I can choose the license that I want. So instead of the in YouTube you only get two, the standard YouTube license, or I can give it the Creative Commons license. And then when people search for my video for Creative Commons, they'll, you know, my video will come up. So some of the best practices for this are be respectful of copyright and licensing. To keep a record of what you found, even if it doesn't require attribution, it's always best, like I was talking about, always at least keep it in the notes, if not on the item itself. If it's fair use, it's a good idea to record your rationale. You know, say, you know, if somebody questions me about this, I'm going to say, you know, I did this fair use analysis. I filled out, especially if you fill out the fair use checklist, you can say it's educational purposes. I was only showing it for 20 people in my class. I didn't affect the market value of the work. It was only a portion of the work. It was the portion that was necessary for the subject that I was talking about. You can keep that on record if for some reason someone questions you and says, I think that was copyright infringement. You can say, well, here was my rationale. I did my fair use analysis. Include your contact info on your own work in case people want to ask permission to use it. Now, one thing about licensing is, like, if somebody says CC BY no derivatives and somebody wants to make a derivative, they could contact you and say, I want to make a derivative. This is what I want to do. I want to add some more questions to your quiz, or I want to, you know, change it from true false to multiple choice or something like that. You know, the license doesn't allow you to make those changes, but you can still ask. So Shiji?
We have more workshops. We're at 3:01, so I want to move.
Okay, talk fast.
So I'll put the link for our schedule for more workshops, but I think a lot of everybody wants to probably find the next slide, which is proof of attendance for today's workshop. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat. It's called GSU Lib Certificate. So please fill out this form, and I will get you a certificate for attending today's workshop at that bit.ly. If you just fill it out. And then if you want to go to the next slide, this is our contact information. I really appreciate everybody coming out and being so engaged with the topic today. This was awesome. Wait, this is our first time teaching this, so we were afraid we'd have tumbleweeds going on, but everybody's very engaged and interested in this topic, so it's been wonderful. We have a survey just to let us know how you feel like we did for today's workshop. I'm putting that link in the chat. So please feel free to fill it out and let us know if there's anything you think we should do differently for the future for this workshop. Please
and
let
that's
us know
not
what
my
you think.
correct phone number anymore. We
Oh boy.
reuse the same image slide over and over, so
Everybody
it's
uses
the wrong
email
phone number.
anyway, so email her.
Yeah.
But are there
Yeah.
any questions? So
Yes.
for those of you who do need to dip out at 3, just fill out the GSU Lib certificate link if you need a credit for today's workshop. But other than that, we have time for some questions. I can stick around. I'm sure, I think Marianne can too, if anybody has
Yeah.
any questions. But if you don't, you're free to log out. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Will you all be sharing the slide presentation? I took some notes, but I know you, in the interest of time, you had to kind of go fast. Is
Yeah.
there a way to get the actual presentation?
Yeah, we can send the slideshow and the recording to the people who registered.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. I
absolutely.
love that. Thanks.
So do we need to do anything, or you got all of our?
We have
information?
whatever you used when you registered,
Okay.
so
All right.
that's what we'll send it to.
Okay. Great.